Hey guys, Zach with Zach's Muscle Motors. Thank you for stopping in for another episode of Tech Talk today. We are going to be discussing cam bearing installs. Not only am I going to show you how to install your cam bearings, I'm going to give you a lesson behind how they work and how to install them. There's going to be a lot of information in this video. It's not going to be quick. It's something you have to really sit down and listen to get understanding. It's not something you want to do incorrectly, so just bear with me. Watch the video, and I guarantee you're going to have a better understanding of what actually goes into having your cam bearings in your motor versus just throwing them in there and not having any clue of what they do. There are a couple different kinds of cam bearings, and I'll go over that in the next part of this video. This is a 327 small block. It's a 1968 block, but we're not going to put a 327 crank back in it. We're putting a 350 crank, so a 3.48 inch stroke crank back in this motor. It's bored 30 over, and that's going to give us a 355 when it's all said and done. Follow with me through this process because I'm going to take you through an entire build on this motor. From the cam bearings, clear up to the valve covers, an entire build. And I'm going to try to do it all this week. My schedule's pretty busy, and it's been a while since I've done a video, and I apologize for that. I've had a lot of things happen this last year. It's been a really rough year for me, but I promise you I'm going to do my best to get this done and get some good content out for you guys to watch on this motor. Also, I am redoing my design for my t-shirts, not drastic, but a little bit, so I will be cutting out the new design on t-shirts. If any of you are interested, I'll put more information out about that, hopefully by the end of the week as well. Remember, subscribe to the page, and go to Zach's Muscle Motors on Facebook, like and share my page as well. Feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns you might have. I'm always around. I've got a map up on my wall now. Anybody that contacts me, I put a pin on the wall. It's just my personal, like, hey, there's people from all over contacting me kind of thing. It's really cool to see just about all the people that contact me from all over the United States and even outside of the United States borders that just want to ask me questions, and that's really cool. So please feel free to get a hold of me. I enjoy it. My phone number is listed on the Facebook page. You can call me too. If I don't answer, I will return your call. So let's go into the other room here. I'll give you a lesson on cam bearings, a little rundown on them, and then we'll get started with the hands-on portion. So stick with me and let's rock and roll with this. This is where the fun stuff starts, cam bearing installation. Before we get started, I want you to understand this is not going to be a quick video. There's going to be several minutes worth of information here that's very crucial, and you need to understand it the best you can. One, if you're not going to be doing this process over and over again, please, I suggest you please take your block and your cam bearings to a machine shop and allow them to install them. It's easier for us as engine builders or a machine shop to install your cam bearings and more cost effective for you. For me, it's 40 bucks. The other machine shop, it's 65 bucks to install your bearings. For you to go out and buy your bearings, buy the tool, that adds up extremely quick, and I'll explain that in a minute. Don't try to make your own tools at home, because that can easily cause you to spend more money than just bringing it to us and letting us do it. I'm not saying that because I'm trying to make money off of you. I'm saying that because I don't want you to get pissed off because you're spending a lot of money on cam bearings because you want to make a tool to do it yourself and you keep ruining bearings. Number one, tools are crucial. This tool in the front was $90. I picked it up out of kind of a haste. I needed it, and it's got a metal slug that goes inside your cam bearing, and you slide your rod down in it, and you use this red cone to center it with your other bearing or inside the cam bore, and you hammer your bearing in. This is not a very high quality tool. I believe this was Proform, if I'm not mistaken. Not to call any brands out, but it is what it is. And I don't use it for anything else except for shoving out old bearings. It's no good for anything else. with it being metal, if there's any nicks or scratches or anything on this, this translates into your new cam bearing, and then you scratch and nick and gouge or whatever your new cam bearing, and then you get upset because you got to buy more bearings, and it's just a pain in the ass because you can't buy one at a time. You got to buy a whole set, and that adds up. That's why I say don't do it on your own. If it's something you're going to do just once, let us do it. We got the tools to do it. It's more cost effective for you. Next, if this is something you're going to be doing over and over and over again for personal use or whatever, I suggest stepping up to a more professional grade of installer. This has a lot of options, and I'll kind of go over a couple of them with you real quick and just show you the quick operation of it here. Basically what you have is an expander. There's a metal cone here. There are 4 dies inside here in this rubber that as you compress it, they expand and open up, which you come here, move it away. You put your expander on, and if you're not sure what size expander to use, that's okay, because in the instructions it tells you exactly how to use this tool, and down here at the bottom it gives you a number at the back of your expander to go with your size of cam bearing. So just look at the directions. They should be there. Once you have your correct expander, you get a slit over on the smaller expander. You either use a small washer or a large washer, depending on what size your bearing is and what it calls for. It will tell you that inside the directions. You have a short length and a long length rod. This is your hammer end. This is the end you'll hammer on. Just for demonstration purposes, I'll show you the small one. You are not going to hammer on this end. This end does not come off and go on this one. It stays on the long rod. After you get it buttoned up, you take a wrench. I believe it's 7/8. You place it over at the end of the hex head here, and you twist your rod, and that makes your expander expand. It swells up inside the bearing. It holds the bearing in place. It's got a nice rubber coating. It's not going to scratch or score or notch or nick the bearing. It's going to keep it safe. Make sure you have it backed up all the way against this metal flange. That's what you're going to hammer against, is that outer edge of your bearing. It's not going to hurt it. Make sure it's tight. Don't over tighten it. You just want it to be snug. Okay? And you're going to put this cone on. You'll place your rod on, or if you're just using that rod, place this on, and then torque it down. Slide your bearing. In some cases, what you're going to have to do is actually make sure it's loose as you go through your cam bore. Take your bearing, go through the bottom, however it is you have to get it into that cam bore, stick it on, tighten it inside the cam bore, and then after you got it tightened up, take your cone, place it on the outside, the front cam bore hole, and what it's going to do is center your rod so it's straight through the block, and then you proceed to hammer. It will drive your cam bearing into the bore, and it's done. It's an absolutely amazing tool. The downside is about the cheapest one you're going to find is $125, and they go up from there. So it's not something I really suggest buying unless you intend on doing this more than once. The next thing I want to talk about is your preparation. Make sure your block is completely clean, and all your your cam bores are free of debris. You don't have anything in them. Make sure they're clean. I do all my block preparation, cleaning, boring, honing, milling, whatever I gotta do to the block. I make sure it is done. The block is painted before I do a final clean on my cam bores before I install the bearings. I don't want any shrapnel or debris or crap FM, whatever, left inside the galleys, left inside the oil orifices or anything. I want to make sure it's completely clean, nothing in there. You get anything inside a bearing, anything as small as a human hair in thickness can score a bearing and start your trouble. And then you got to take it all back apart, start all over again, and the whole point is to do it right the first time so you have years of operation out of your motor and get the best performance. We don't want to have to keep doing stuff over and over again. So, that being said, the right tools and being completely clean. Now, there are different kinds of bearings. There are different kinds of cam bores. I had a real bad problem saying lifter bores tonight. I don't know why. I'll try to get past that. This is for the 327 we're building right now. There are 5 bearings in the small block Chevy. Each bearing has a particular cam bore that has to go into. Some cam bores on some engines are all the same. It doesn't matter what bearing goes where. On the small block Chevy, it does. If you look at your box, any box or package you get when you buy your cam bearings, no matter what brand, should tell you what cam bearing goes to what cam bore. On the back of the bearing, there will be a printed or engraved number somewhere on your bearing. You match it up to here and you put it inside the cam bore that it tells you to put it into. There is an oil hole in your cam bearing, okay? And we're going to discuss here in just a moment. I'll show you a couple pictures of smooth and grooved cam bores and how to install these. When you take them out, make sure you don't have any scores or marks or anything from the manufacturer, shipping or whatever. Make sure they're all taken care of and clean. They don't have rust or pitting or anything like that, scratches. Just make sure they're completely okay. First up is a grooved cam bore. Now if you're looking at your block, you got it sitting up just like you're looking at it inside the car, but you got it all disassembled, you got it all clean, there's no crud left in it. You are going to have either a grooved cam bore or a solid smooth cam bore. This is an example, just like in our 327 outside in the 68 block. There is a grooved cam bore, okay? There is a groove cut all the way around the inside of that cam bore. The whole circumference has a solid groove that goes around where your oil holes meet in the middle. When you're dealing with this kind of a bore, you have a couple options as far as the installation. You can either, if I can get it out of the box, you can line your hole up in your bearing with your oil hole inside your cam bore. So more or less, in our small block Chevy, and this is it's pretty much the same throughout the industry in the old blocks, but there may be a variation. This is your oil hole. This is your cam bore. You can take your bearing and you can match up your oil hole in your bearing with your oil hole in the block. If it is grooved like this, you can also twist your bearing. So instead of having your oil hole straight up with your oil hole inside the bore, you can twist your bearing, and this is on a a clockwise rotation motor. You can go anywhere between noon to 4 o'clock, and between 2 and 4 are your best bet. I'll explain that in just a moment. If you have a smooth bore, such as this, where there's no groove cut into your cam bore, you have to make sure that absolutely 100% that this hole, or if you have multiples, that they all match up with the hole wherever it is cut inside your cam bore. If you have it off, let's say this is your looking down your cam bore and your oil hole is here, you don't want to have your cam bearing slightly out too far and have an overlap in your oil hole. If you have an overlap where your hole doesn't exactly line up, you're going to have a increase in oil pressure because the oil is not going to escape that orifice like you want it to, and you're going to have a lack of oil getting to your cam bearing in the bottom of your cam. So you have to make sure that these holes match up identically, just like one hole, as best as you can get it. Now, you're never, ever, ever going to be absolutely perfect, but you want to be as close as you possibly can. And usually by taking a flashlight and looking, you're going to see if you have an overlap in your hole. Another thing you want to make sure you do is you can take a right angle or any type of pick like this, and you will insert it into your cam bearing. You want to make sure that you don't touch the inside of your cam bearing. You just want to go to the hole, place your pick down through, make sure you can get in through the other hole. See how much room you have, kind of just wiggle it around. Make sure that you are as center as you can possibly get it. Do not touch the inner surface of your cam bearing with this pick. If you scratch it, that's room for error. It'll cause you trouble down the road. You want to prevent as much headache as you possibly can, so don't scratch or gouge or nick or whatever with your tools. Be extremely careful. Just pay attention to what you're doing. So with the smooth bore, you want to make sure you've got it dead nuts. It's got to be right where it's supposed to be. This will give you a small example of a different kind of bearing. This is a roller bearing. I've not used any of these myself. I don't know anybody that has. I can't vouch for whether they're any good or not, but there it is. Instead of being a solid flat surface such as this bearing, it has a set of rollers that actually do most of your friction work. So they may actually be better. I've just never used them. But if you look right here, this is an example of preparation. If you look on the outside of this timing chain cover, this machine surface, you can see where they've painted over the water jackets, they've painted over the mounting surface for the timing chain cover. I disagree with that 100% completely. I do not do that. When I prep a block and I paint a block, I make sure that I mask all this off. I take a razor and I cut around all this. So all my machine mating surfaces are completely clean. There's no debris, there's no paint, nothing. I don't want any chance for anything to leak here. If this person intends on going back and cleaning it, then that's just introducing a chance to get foreign material inside these roller bearings, especially. You get a little bit of debris in that roller bearing, that starts a failure right from the get-go. I don't care what it is. Make sure this is clean. Don't be this guy. Now, what I was talking about as far as your placement of your oil hole, and this is going to apply only to your cam bores that have the groove, like the small block Chevy we're working on. Basically, you have your cam bore, okay? Now, in this cam board, you've got your trough or your groove cut around the inside of this cam bore. This middle line is just to simulate what you can't see. You've got your oil passage that comes down from your galleys at 12 o'clock. You've got one at 6 o'clock. They go down to your mains, okay? When you stick your cam bearing in, you hammer it in, you can take this hole. If you have one that has a groove, and I'm going to emphasize that, if you have a smooth bore, do not do this, match them up. You can do a couple things. You can either install your bearing with your oil hole in the bearing at noon, where they typically do them at the factory, but you can also go clear down to around 4 o'clock. Between 2 and 4 is typically a pretty good place. Now this is on a clockwise rotating engine. Some engines rotate counterclockwise. This will apply opposite if it's a counterclockwise rotating engine. What you're doing is feeding oil directly to your camshaft here. Okay, here's your camshaft. Most of your pressure is going to be right here at the bottom. I call this your danger zone because as your valve train pushes down, and especially if you're running a heavier valve spring, 200-300 pounds, if you got a good set of valves and lifters, roller lifters, and all that stuff, you're running some heavy duty valve pressure, you're putting a ton of weight against that cam. This is where you're going to see your wear in your bearings. Mainly in this area due to the rotation. Not so much over here, not so much on top, but all right here. Okay? What you're doing is creating a reservoir of oil. I like to go between 2 and 4 because I want to keep the amount of oil in the reservoir best I can close to where it's going to be used the most, right here at the bottom at 6 o'clock. If you install it at noon, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it gives it this much more time to escape. So as your clearance is more with the increased pressure going against the bottom of your cam, that little distance that oil can go away is that much less that you're going to have in your reserve between 2 and 6 o'clock. You want to maximize this right in here. You can increase by a few psi your oil pressure because it's not a straight shot. You're shutting off the ability for it to flow straight to the cam by turning that oil hole in your cam bearing to 2 or 4 o'clock. You can increase your oil pressure slightly, and what you're doing is you're putting the max amount of oil in this reserve right before your wedge where it gets pulled in, where it kind of comes together, where your pressure is. Because you're going to have a gap over here as to where this is going to be basically touching besides the film of your oil that's protecting it from getting rubbed raw. So in this wedge where it comes together, you want to have the most oil being placed right where you need it. Don't give it any time to escape. Maximize your reservoir, maximize the effect of your wedge, and protect the bottom of your cam bearing and your cam. That's what that's about. Again, if you have a set of cam bearings that go into a smooth bore, you can't really play with this. You have to get those holes lined up wherever they are in the cam bore. That's why having the correct bearing for that is crucial. And again, if you have a counterclockwise rotating engine, you're going to be going at 10 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and your wedge will be on this part, and your reservoir will be here, and your pressure zone will be, your danger zone will be here. So it's basically just a mirror effect of that. I can't emphasize enough just how much the cleanliness of your engine really plays a role in doing this job correctly. Just take the time. It's not difficult, just a little bit of understanding to make sure you do it right, because you don't want to have to do this again. And anytime you're building a motor, there's money involved, and typically it's not just a little bit of money. You're spending a lot of money, so you want to make sure you do it right. One more little tip I'll give you, I guess I can draw this out. If you're getting down, if you're like a racer, or you've got a pumped up street car, or whatever the case may be, and you want to minimize the amount of wear on your cam timing gear, right here on the machine surface, if you've got like a gear drive set where you have a brass bushing that goes there, to help maximize or minimize the wear, maximize the effectiveness of your performance and longevity. You might not be able to see it on the screen here, but this is the bottom. I'll just draw it here. This is your machine surface. On the front of your block, you slide your cam in, your timing gear goes on top. This is that machine surface. You've got your oil passage coming in at 12 o'clock, and you've got your oil passage at 6 o'clock that goes down to your main. Okay? What you can do, I kind of screwed that up, but it is what it is. You can drill a hole right there in the middle, right in the face of this machine surface. 30 thousandths. Take it all the way back to where it would be in the middle, where it meets this galley that's going down to your main. So drill your hole, go through until you get to your galley that goes down to your main. What that's going to allow to happen is, as the pressure works its way down, it's going to allow just enough oil to rub against your bearing here, and it's going to help keep that machine surface coated so you don't have wear. It's just a little added peace of mind while you got it apart to go ahead and do that if you're doing something that's more performance and you're worried about it. If you don't do it, don't worry. There's a bunch of motors out there that haven't had it done and they've got tons of miles on them. It's not a big deal, but for you performance guys like me, this is just a little added bonus, just a little tip, something that you can use to advance your performance and longevity of your motor. So with that said, we're going to go out to the shop and I'm going to show you how to actually install the cam bearings into your block. So get ready, here we go. Okay everyone, this is going to be the actual install portion of the video, how to install your cam bearings. I'm going to show you a quick tip on how to orient your cam bearing oil hole inside your cam bore without having to go through a bunch of mess. Basically what I do is take a sheet of white paper, draw me a line vertical, straight line, trace around the outside of the bearing. Now I've marked it at 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you're going to install it in a stock location, you're going to put it at number 12. And what I mean by put it at number 12 is take your oil hole, match it up and down with number 12. In my case, I'm going to go to number 2. So I want to take my oil hole, put it at the number 2 location, and I'm going to come down here with a Sharpie. I'm going to make my mark at 6 o'clock. So what this is going to do is when I put my bearing inside of the cam bore, I put my tool on, I'm going to make this mark be right in the middle, center, with the cam bore. And that's going to put my mark at 2 o'clock in the cam bore. Now remember, you can only do this when you have a cam bore that has an oil groove around the outside of the cam bore. If you have a solid cam bore with just your oil hole with no groove around it, you have to put them in the way they line up. So what I'm going to do is insert my tool. Make sure you got your cone on it, because if you don't put your cone on it, you put your tool in there, you're going to get upset when you have to take it all back apart. Take your bearing, stick it inside the valley here, and you're going to take and slide the cam bearing over the tool. You want to be very careful not to scratch inside your bearing at all. Alright, now this is a 7th, on this particular tool, this is a 7/8 socket or wrench you're going to use to tighten it down. For this back bearing, I'm going to use a socket because it's just kind of a pain in the butt location. So I'm going to tighten down on my bearing, and don't go excessive here. You want to make sure that your back of your bearing buttons up flush with this metal expansion flange. Okay, I'm snug against my bearing. Now, again, remember, put these in dry. Don't use lubrication on these, because lubrication on the outside of your bearing and against the wall of the cam bore can cause a bearing to spin. If a bearing spins inside the cam bore, you're going to get metal particles in your oil, and you can wipe your engine out and you got to replace that cam bearing anyway. So it just makes for a pain in the ass. So at this time, I'm going to visually check to make sure that my line is in the middle of my cam bore where I want it, because that's going to put my orientation on my bearing oil hole right where I want it. And this is going to be at the 2 o'clock position on this motor if you're looking at it from the front looking back. This is crucial. You want to make sure you do this correctly. Okay. I'm satisfied with where it is. So I'll walk around. I'm going to get my hammer. And you can also use a brass hammer if you like. It's a little easier on your end down here, but this end's pretty tough for banging on. Now, the goal here is to drive the cam bearing in with the minimal amount of blows as possible. What I like to do is make sure my tool is as straight as possible. The cone is set completely. There's no wiggle room inside the bearing. Give it just a couple little taps to set it. Now it's not going anywhere. Now you're going to drive it home. Constantly watch your bearing. I feel like we're pretty good right there. So I'm going to take my ratchet. And you may have to make an adjustment to this if you go a little far. It's not a big deal. You can bang it back through. You just want to be careful. Pull my tool out. Okay. So I haven't gone quite far enough. I need to go back in a little farther. My oil hole isn't quite back to the groove yet. So I want to expand my tool. Start getting it lined back up on the bearing. Snug it back down. Alright, then we're better off there. Loosen this up. Now, this is going to be hard for you to see, probably impossible for you to see. But I still need to go back just a hair more. I'm just a little bit off of where I want to be. No big deal. Stick the tool back in. Snug it up. Now I think one whack, maybe two here, will seat it where I want it. That should do it. Okay. Now I'm using my point to go in here and check the depth, to kind of feel around and make sure that I'm right there in the groove where I want to be, and I am. So that cam bearing is installed. It's as simple as that. Now you're going to do the same thing through from 4 to 1. You're going to put number 1 in last. And to put number 1 in, you're going to be extremely careful because you have to feed your tool the opposite direction back through the rest of these and put your cone in at the back of the number 5 hole to hammer in your number 1 bearing up front. Repeat this process through the rest of them. And also in the small block Chevy, your front bearing has 2 oil holes. In your cam bore up front, you only have 1 oil hole. What I like to do in this situation is put 1 bearing hole or 1 oil hole at 12 o'clock and where the other one falls down at 4 o'clock. Oh, sorry, I'm really close to the camera there. But yeah, you're going to put your number 1 hole at 12 o'clock, your other one will come down to 4 o'clock. That's a good location for it to be. You're going to have plenty of oil going around from 12, and you're going to have a good reservoir, and then this is going to help feed your wedge right here where everything gets smashed together in that pressure point in the danger zone. Okay, so do that, and those will have your cam bearings installed. This is the first step to really building your engine after you have it cleaned and painted, is putting your cam bearings in. Alright guys, there you have it. That's a rundown of a cam bearing install on a small block 350. Like I said, there's some information here you need to understand. There are some differences, so just make sure you follow them. Make sure you're doing it the correct way, and it's really not that bad. If you have any concerns or feel like it's something you really don't want to get into or spend the money on tools and things to do it, just take it to a machine shop or to your engine builder. It's going to be a lot easier for them to do it for you in the long run. Remember, there's going to be an entire series on this build for this 327, 355, so stay tuned for the videos coming out on that. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, go to Zach's Muscle Motors, find me on Instagram, Facebook, like, share, and get that page out to everybody. And if you have questions, comments, whatever, feel free to call, text, or email, or hit me up on Facebook Messenger, whatever you want to do. I'm open, and I don't mind you getting a hold of me. So if I don't answer right away, remember, I'll call you back or text, whatever. So you guys have a great day. Get ready for the next video. We're going to be going into crank and all that stuff next. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for joining in.